All right, thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to present here at Refresh Teaching. I always really like the short coffee breaks. So I'm Dominik. I'm a part-time researcher and lecturer at the Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences and a part-time clinical pharmacist at Kantonsspital Baden. And I was invited to present to you my experiences and thoughts on using portals. And I would like to show you three elements we or I use in our teaching segments. And I think these three elements are a slightly extended version of a portal, but I think they could make a difference in your teaching segments as well. So first, the setting. You see here the HCI building on Hönkerberg, and in the fourth finger is the Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences. We offer a bachelor, 2 masters, and several advanced study courses. And for today, the master in pharmacy is important because this leads up to the federal exams in pharmacy, which generates licensed pharmacists. And this is actually where I and several of my colleagues come in as practicing teachers. So our task is to let the students transition from scientists slowly to providers of pharmaceutical patient care, service they can offer to their clients in their pharmacy after completing our studies. And I brought 2 lectures. One is a lecture series with me. The pharmaceutical cases is a lecture series 7 times 2 hours for bachelor students in pharmaceutical sciences, around 70 students. And there we put them into first contact with actually applied and practical questions they could encounter later on. And the second one is the therapeutic skills, where I have 3 hours on applied pharmacology with our around 30 to 40 students in the master pharmacy. And with the pharmazeutische Fallbeispiele, I would like to show you the impact of extensively introducing yourselves and sharing your visions and goals for the lectures. And with the second part, I would like to show you the impact you can make when you explain to students why you chose a certain teaching style. So let's start with the pharmaceutical cases, the pharmazeutische Fallbeispiele. We are a teaching team, 4 of us, and we take the time in the first lecture to introduce ourselves, which I truly consider part of the portal. And we don't just state our names and titles, but also our background and what we do in context with what we are going to teach them and why we are teaching them certain objectives. So imagine the students are familiar with professors, with their research group, and maybe telling them about their expertise. And now we are here for practicing teachers, and we would like to tell them what our background actually is. And I think this generates 3 effects. They get to know us and our background, our motives, which lowers communication barriers. They understand our motives for teaching them what we would like them to achieve. And they understand why we teach them certain content and want them to achieve maybe also boring learning objectives. And side effects of this introduction may include that you get contacted by the students for possible later job opportunities. So for the pandemic, we switched to Moodle, and this allowed us to generate this introduction of ourselves as a page, an overview, the students are able to click at any time. And we wrote a short description with our background and what we do. And I quickly checked the logs for today. Only 36 of our 72 students, so that's precisely 50%, actually accessed this page. But I like to think of this as every pharmacy student who has a perspective maybe gets inspired by our own career path, our background is actually a win. Moodle also allowed for the second element I consider being part of the portal, and is actually quite similar to what what Daniel told us with his mails. So we wrote a welcoming message to the lecture series in general, and I quickly translated this to English. And you see here that we told the students that we would like to introduce them to the complexity and our fascination for pharmaceutical questions, and actually our passion for the profession. And we want them to be confronted with questions that could later on occur in everyday professional life as a pharmacist, which acutely will affect them. And we did this not only for the lecture series, but actually for every week. And here again, the short excerpt. Using examples of prescriptions, we will also give you first tips on the use of the actual drugs, which you can pass on to your own patients later in your studies. So the 5th year, our students get to go into a pharmacy and actually work as a pre-registration pharmacist. And I think statements like this generate a whole different kind of motivation in our students than just having the bland learning objectives, which can sound boring at times. Now on to the why, and maybe why you teach this way. And the therapeutic skills, the dosing in renal insufficiency and older patients is a lecture I inherited. 3 hours as stated. And I think this was already a good lecture. It was mostly passive by nature, but included interactive segments. But I chose to change this around even more and have 80% of active student engagement and just a few slides at the beginning with content. And I did this because I want our future pharmacists to be able to select the right tools for their medication review later on in their careers by themselves. And the lecture then looked like this, the practical part. I introduced an information bazaar where I scattered the tools they could use for the case example I provided them by themselves as a team of 2, walk around, check the different tools and then select. And after some thinking, pairing and snowballing, we ended up back at the blackboard with post-its and discussed the identified drug-related problems. Now for this teaching style, I really needed to motivate our students because at this time they are already working in a pharmacy, they are tired, they are alone or not with their student peers. So they really enjoy to come back to the lecture room, to be with their peers, chat a little bit. But I have the impression that they would like to consume a passive lecture, like watching a Netflix series to relax a bit. So I chose to present them at the end of my portal a slide, precisely this one. And I told them, listen, this is a study nicely done at Harvard on with physics students, and probably you will enjoy this lecture less because it's an active segment. You will feel that you have learned less during the next few hours, And probably you will like me and my teaching style less than if I were to do it in a passive style. But then I showed them the other part of the graph and told them that they will actually learn a lot more when engaged with the material like this. And I also showed them the conclusions by the authors, which stated that the students should know about the added value of active teaching segments, and that this is actually my job as an instructor, as a tutor, to inform them about this added value. And with presenting them this slide, I just precisely did this. And the students later gave me feedback on the new lecture style, and some of them even made comments referring back to this slide, or affirmed me with the choice I made. So this was a nice thing to receive. Yeah, and this already concludes my contribution of the use of portals. I think I showed you a slightly extended interpretation of the portals with the 3 elements: properly introducing yourself, your background, and your motives for standing in front of them, telling the students why you want them to achieve certain learning objectives, and letting them understand your teaching methods by providing them a look behind the scenes.